Hi, this is Anna. If you search for autism in YouTube, you will find maybe hundreds of videos, all focused on the uh, possibility that Tylenol predisposes or causes children, to autism. It's become politicized. I'm going to avoid the politics. I'm going to explore ways to define autism and give the history of how the concept came about. When I read two separate paragraphs or brief descriptions of autism, the descriptions don't appear to have that much in common. So it's confusing. It's not really clear that we know what autism is. One reason for this doubt is captured colloquially. I mean, there's a saying, if you've met one person with autism, what have you accomplished? Well, you've met one person with autism. That's all you've done. You don't really know anything about autism. You know about that one particular person. That is, the population is very diverse. Okay, you want a definition, though, and I've challenged you with the possibility that there might not be a very good definition, a simple one. So I can't really get us out of the rabbit hole completely. It's above my pay grade, but I do know I do have formal training in psychology and medicine, and I can hopefully get us one or two rungs up the ladder out of the rabbit hole. Diagnosis. Diagnosis is a big deal. It's an emotionally charged issue in the area of autism or being on the spectrum. I've discussed in another video some of the issues with psychiatric diagnosis. My complaint is about the disease concept. There's this assumption that is unspoken and therefore difficult to challenge, that if your mind or someone's mind, maybe a loved one's mind or behavior, is atypical or annoying or unpleasant to others or to themselves, then that person is somehow diseased, defective. Persons with autism have advocated for a different label, one that is not a disease, neurodivergent. Divergent just means following a different path. On the other hand, I've heard many people say that they were relieved to receive the diagnosis. Well, one thing a disease label does, and it's done it for me, is to help me find people who are like me, who face the same challenges, and therefore get the benefit of other people's experience and wisdom. So, to me, that's what diagnosis is good for. There were three pioneers of autism research, spanning from around 1920 to sometime after World War II. Sukareva, Asperger, and Connor. The first one, Grunya Efimovna Sukareva. She was a Russian physician, decorated, Order of Lenin. I'm going to attempt to paste her name in Cyrillic in the Russian alphabet in the description. She had, like I say, a long and distinguished career. She's said to have been kind, to have loved the children she worked with, and went out of her way to name their special traits and abilities, their gifts. Her target population initially was 6 boys at the institute she founded, the Psychoneurological Department for Children in Moscow. In 1925, she published a paper in Russian describing her patients. 1924. A year later, it was translated into German. She cited social withdrawal, a preference to be alone, at least under some circumstances, intellectual intensity, motor clumsiness. Motor refers to coordinated movement, such as walking. Sensory sensitivity, I think a lot of us have heard about that. An aversion to noises, or even strong reaction to noises. She also cited idiosyncratic interests and emotional fragility. I got this list from Copilot because non-professionals are systematically denied access to certain scientific publications. The fact that her initial consort was all boys foresees the gender imbalance in the diagnosis that persists today, at least in the U.S. Cucurella was a woman, and similar to many other female workers, her work as researchers, her work is nearly invisible in some circles. The Wikipedia article barely mentions her at all, even though she identified autism 20 years before the next person, Asperger, Hans Asperger. His name was given to the disorder for a long time, Asperger syndrome. He is reported to have been a Nazi and a fascist. The journal Molecular Autism apparently states that he sent children to known eugenic death camps, and it's well known that he was involved with Nazi ideology in support of eugenics. What is eugenics? It's a Nazi-supported ideology that justifies sterilization or murder of persons selected on criteria of health or purity. Okay, his description, similar to Cucurella's: lack of empathy, limited ability to form friendships, one-sided pedantic conversation, intense absorption in special interests, clumsy movement, and motor awkwardness. I used the word pedantic. What is pedantic speech? Well, you're hearing it right now. This lecture is a little pedantic. Formal, attention to detail, maybe painstakingly precise. It's my style. But it is a taste of pedantic. Asperger is said to refer to his children as little professors. Okay, the third researcher is Leo Connor, Australian. He started with 8 boys and 3 girls. Here's his list of traits: profound social detachment, resistance to change. There's a story about you move a kid's toy and he gets really upset because it's not where it's supposed to be. Language peculiarities, repetitive behaviors, and this can include motor behaviors. For example, I've heard of this one. This is sort of people that are farther along the spectrum, I think. He noted obsessions with spinning objects, head shaking, and finally, he said the intellectual potential was normal. It's now known that there's a wide range. There are autistic people with PhDs. I've had contact with them, and there are people who maybe are less brilliant. Okay, historically, autism was confused with schizophrenia. The reason is because people with schizophrenia also have social withdrawal, and the word was applied to that trait. Schizophrenia is quite different. There are typically hallucinations and delusions. Autistic persons generally do not have those traits or symptoms. The prevalence, I'm going to go back to this gender issue. Gender is closely related to autism. The prevalence of autism in the U.S. That is, how many cases there are, right? How many people there are with autism that have come to the attention of the medical system. How many of those are there at any given time? Well, it's heavily skewed towards males in the U.S. And there are two possible factors. One is it's called brain dimorphism. There are differences in the brains of people who are assigned male at birth, like me, versus people who are assigned female at birth. Well, the differences aren't very pronounced. There's a lot of overlap. It's more like a statistical difference, but they are there, and I think nobody really knows how big of a role they play in behavior. The reason for these differences is genes, that is the data stored in chromosomes, and the hormones, and they're interrelated. The hormones affect the expression of genes, and the genes affect the expression of hormones. So the brain dimorphism is one possible factor. The other one is differences in communication or the processing of emotions. There's a male stereotype, right? And maybe a female stereotype. And no one knows how much these differences are caused by environment or cultural expectations, for example, in school or in the media. So the diagnostic criteria may be biased in such a way that boys get the diagnosis more often. So, bottom line, clinicians, when it's mild, the clinicians don't have exactly a smoking gun or an acid test to determine if a person has autism, is on the spectrum. I should mention there are fads in diagnosis. 5 or 10 years ago, for example, bipolar was very popular. Before that, borderline personality disorder. Right now, autism. Fads. So how much confidence does that give you? I should mention there are people who have these traits to an intense degree, and it rules out any question whether they have it or not. There are people who are nonverbal, who don't speak, or maybe they don't understand speech, and it can be difficult to tell whether it's a lack of understanding or a lack of ability to speak, because you say something and you don't get an answer, or you don't get the answer you would expect. You don't know if you weren't understood or if the person couldn't produce the answer. There are also people who have for example, I think there are people who do this. And that's pretty frank. The next video may also be about autism. There are two possibilities. What are the implications if somebody gets a diagnosis? Or what's happening in the brains of these people? How are they different? Or maybe a video on the Tylenol controversy. One of those will be coming out soon. Thank you. Good night.